if it's actually good.
I think it's more of who you play it with, at least for me. So, all right, let's go ahead and we can get started. Welcome back, Bears fans, to another episode of the Chicago Audible, and welcome to our Week 12 Bears-Packers preview show. I'm your host, Will DeWitt. I want to make sure to take a moment here to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. We are recording here on Wednesday evening, and we won't be back in the air until Sunday night. And hopefully, perhaps the Bears will give us some reason to be thankful after this upcoming game against Green Bay. But from the Chicago Audible to your family, a very happy Thanksgiving to you and your loved ones. But let's get started here. I'm your host, as I mentioned, I'm Will DeWitt. Joined with me is my co-host, Nicholas Moriano. Man, how's your break treating you? It seems like you seem refreshed. You're getting some good rest. Life good?
Life's good, Will. Just having this little bye week from school, grad school. Been going to the gym and just kind of doing my thing and just I'm not taking it for granted, that's for sure. I'm just enjoying each and every day. But yeah, I do feel refreshed, and it's been nice to kind of have this.
Absolutely. What are you looking forward to the most tomorrow, food-wise, that is not ham?
Ooh, I'm a big mashed potatoes guy, and what I like to do, I'll get like biscuits or rolls, and then put mashed potatoes in there, put some ham in there, and just kind of make like a sandwich concoction, and just kind of eat those throughout the day. Honestly, on Thanksgiving. What about yourself?
Gee, that's a really good question. I'm making some sweet potato casserole that I'm looking forward to. It's going to have some like pecan crumble on top. That's going to be fun. Actually, are you cooking anything this year?
I don't think anyone wants that, Will, to be completely honest. I might. So this year I'm definitely going to be more helpful than I usually am. I mean, just with the last couple times the Bears have been playing. So, I've just been, I guess, time has been occupied elsewhere, but I will definitely be in the kitchen more, and I'll update you if I do cook anything. It probably won't be good though.
Just curious. Yeah, I know. I think that is one reason, though, to be thankful is that the Bears do not have a Thanksgiving game. I think we would all prefer to keep that outside of the equation. So lucky for us, the schedule worked out. But Nick, let's go ahead and begin this week's game preview as the Bears aim to stop the bleeding after 4 straight losses before the bye week. A win here does put them within 1 game of first place in the North. A loss would drop them down to 3 games with only 5 games remaining on the schedule. So obviously it's a big pivotal game one way or the other that will kind of define how the rest of the season will probably play out. But Nick, interestingly enough here, it's week 12 and it's our first matchup against the Packers. Usually happens a little bit later. So as we've had all season to kind of look at them, what's your initial perception of the Green Bay Packers heading into this week?
Yeah, they're a team that's obviously competing to make a run in the playoffs. They're clear-cut best team in the NFC North, someone that's had the Bears number for years now, really, and just a team that really goes through Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers can take you far places, to be completely honest. So it's a team that we're all too familiar with, and we're all too familiar with the results that come from these games usually, Will. So that's what I think about the Green Bay Packers. I took Brady, my puppy, to the dog park the other day, and this other older gentleman was there. He's like, and he saw my Bears hoodie. He's like, man, we just need to get a win. I'm tired of those guys up north. I've been a season ticket holder for 46 years. I'm tired of it. I'm like, yeah, I'm tired of it too. And I'm not even half your age, but like, I think that's the feeling of just the Bears Packers rivalry, right? I don't even know if you can call it that with how one-sided it's been, but that's been, I guess, the initial perception of the Packers. They're just a team that's had the Bears number for a long time now.
Yeah, they really have. On top of obviously just the Bears being in the wrong end of these things, I did notice that the Bears are 1-6 against the Packers on Sunday night. They've lost the last 4 Sunday night meetings between these two. Under Matt LaFleur, they're 5-0 after a loss in his 2 seasons. And Matt Nagy, he's 0-2 after his bye week. So it's one of those where everything just kind of adds up in one direction. When I look at Green Bay, obviously they have a high-octane offense, 3rd highest scoring offense in the NFL. Rodgers is playing some efficient ball, and that defense is tough enough, which doesn't take a lot against this Bears offense. But yeah, it's going to be a big test on many different degrees. But let's jump in and talk about, I guess a general one would be, I don't know, is there anything you wanted to say about the Packers having our number? I know the Packers have won, I think, 17 of the last 20 meetings. It's been a very poor decade for the Bears in this rivalry. And I don't know if this is the week to get our hopes up that things could change, but it has been tough sledding for us on this podcast with these Green Bay losses. Some of them kind of loom a little larger, deflate the balloon a little bit more than some of the other ones. There's been a few long, late nights. I'm fearing we're going to have another long night Sunday.
Yeah, and I mean, right now the series all-time 99, 95, and 6 in favor of the Packers, and this is the 200th meeting, if I'm not mistaken, between these two teams. So historic rivalry, no doubt, in a lot of history, but you're right, Will. A lot of these games that we remember, unfortunately, are on the bad end. The last game that I've been to, or the one that actually counted between this rivalry, I actually saw a Bears victory, which obviously doesn't come very often, and that was week 15 in 2018 where they clinched the division. So it means a lot, and it would be great to see the Bears actually do something in prime time against the Packers, and just show that they can salvage maybe whatever's left of the season. But we're not going to get our hopes up. This is a Bears team that's trending in the wrong direction. It's a Packers team coming off a loss to the Colts. They're going to be extra motivated to beat the Bears at home. So it's a rivalry, like I said, but it's been way too one-sided to really get your hopes up, I guess, for a game like this. You could be excited throughout the week, Bears-Packers week, right? Lower expectations on game day, because that's just how it's been for a very long time now.
Hopefully it's not a game where it's halftime and we're already wanting to, do the post-game show. We know how that thing's going. Hopefully it's a battle throughout and competitive. I think we need to see some competitiveness from this team. On top of that, just looking at how these things are going to shake up, just looking at the Bears' offense in general, we kind of had a lukewarm quarterback answer this afternoon. Mitchell Trubisky was the one that took all of the reps in practice today, but there's no official word if he will be the starter. Nick Foles is still considered, as Nagy said, day-to-day, so he's not committing to Mitch, although all signs point to 10 getting back into the swing of things this week. Does it matter who's under center, Nick? I think it does somewhat, but I'm just curious your thoughts here as, again, we don't even know who's going to be playing quarterback, which is always an interesting situation to be in. We have actually been this way since entering the first week almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And to answer your question, Will, does it matter? I don't really think so. We've seen both quarterbacks play, and they both have not played at a nearly good enough level for this Bears team to actually be successful on offense. But I will say this. It looks like signs are pointing towards Trubisky playing this game just due to health. And I think that was a big thing Matt Nagy said today. It's all about availability. And right now, Trubisky's the one that's available. He's the one that's practiced. And I will be completely honest. If he's playing, I think I'm a little bit more excited about the game. Again, not maybe for the result that may happen, but just having Trubisky back there, what we've seen the past 8 weeks with Nick Foles, really, it hasn't been obviously very good for the Bears offense. And it might not be better with Trubisky, but something about seeing number 10 out there again and the option to escape the pocket, extend plays with his legs does entice me a little bit. So I'm hoping we see 10, to be completely honest, but Nagy, I guess, didn't actually give an answer, but it looks like it's going to be Trubisky.
I like it too. Just for the reason why we're okay when they switch to Foles. Hopefully this does provide a spark. And on top of that too, I want to see what a pissed off Mitch can, what can he do? Can he just play loose? What does he have to lose at this point? He doesn't have the pressure of holding on to the position. He knows, one way or the other, I just have to perform. And if he plays with a bigger chip on, either of those two injured shoulders, well, one's healed from last year, now it's his right one. I don't care which one, but it would be interesting to see what he can do. And maybe if he can just take care of Green Bay, it would be enough for, maybe this will be not the salvaging moment for Mitch. Obviously, his time in Chicago after this year, it's already kind of written up on the wall, but maybe you're like, hey, remember when Mitch had a spot start and he beat the Packers? That was a highlight. That would be a cool way to kind of go about it. But like you, Nick, offensively may not matter all too much in terms of production. That offensive line is not helping. I do think if this offense in general, though, does what they did with Mitch early on this season, maybe that could help them out, more under center. And I know there's some good stats for this offense when they have gone under center this season, and just getting Mitch outside of the pocket, get him on the move, and see if that can maybe help combat that woeful offensive line that they have in front of them. And it can't get much worse. In Foles, he had 7 starts this year. In 7 starts, the Bears have only mustered on offense 9 touchdowns. That's, again, we know this. Everyone knows how bad the Bears' offense is, and I don't know if it can get much worse. I do know, though, Nick, looking at the rushing attack, I know we get David Montgomery back, which is exciting, and the Bears averaged 5 yards per carry when Mitch was the starter, dropped that down to below 2.87. Do you think if they go back to the offense that we saw with Mitch a little bit more, we could see an uptick with the healthy David Montgomery, or is that more of everything we saw up front, right? The COVID on the offensive line, the injuries up front, losing a James Daniels. I think there's a lot in the equation, but still the fact that you almost drop your rushing totals with 2 different quarterbacks is still interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and that'd be a very large, complicated equation that I would have no idea solving there, Will. But I think it could help because defenses have to account for Trubisky being mobile and getting outside the pocket. But I will add another player that was a part with Trubisky that's no longer going to be here if he does start on Sunday, and that's James Daniels at left guard, who I think was playing better in the first 2 weeks, obviously gone for the rest of the season with that torn pectoral injury. But it can't hurt you. Like this rushing attacks already last in the league. It can't get any worse statistically because they're already last. So I think they could maybe see an uptick in their rushing totals. Green Bay is just not a very good team in terms of tackling right now. And David Montgomery, obviously, is one of the better running backs in the league at forcing missed tackles. According to ESPN Packers reporter Rob Davowski, in the game against the Colts, the Packers allowed 72 of the 140 rushing yards, 51.4% will, after first contact. And we know David Montgomery, he's tied for 5th amongst running backs in avoided tackles on both rushes and receptions. So it's a perfect recipe to maybe see David Montgomery have a good game this again on Sunday night. But we'll see if that actually can be a factor, because we know the Bears can face a really bad rushing defense, but this offense will find a way to not be able to take advantage of what the defense is really giving them.
Yeah, they've allowed teams to have rushers for over 90 yards against them. Green Bay has in each of their last 6 games. The Bears are coming off a game, again, no David Montgomery, but only 41 yards on the ground. I know David's great at breaking tackles, getting yards after it. My question would be, where's that contact going to happen? Is it going to happen 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage? Can it happen a yard or 2 past it? And if it's the opposite, if it's actually one where we're getting some forward momentum first, then maybe we can see some yards put up on the ground. But if he's still getting contacted in the backfield like we saw almost all season long, and then I don't think it's going to matter, because you can have 4 yards afterward and it's still a 2-yard rush. So really it's going to depend on that. Is this a game where you would expect the Bears to at least attempt to establish a run? And if they do, would it be what we've seen over the last few weeks, or do you think they do try moving things under center a little bit more? I think you should. It would be, if you are self-scouting and you saw that working in the first couple of weeks and you kind of deviated away from it, why not go back to it, put JP Holtz back there, go back fullback mode, and see what happens?
Yeah, I think that would be, it would put the Bears offense and his team in a position, I think, just to make this competitive. I don't want to say they're going to win the game, but just to make it at least competitive on the offensive side of the ball. When you look at the Packers' 3 losses, each of those 3 teams ran the ball for over 30 rushing attempts. And maybe this is a game where, look, even if you're not getting maybe the most efficient yardage early on, you still got to try to commit to it to maybe set things up later. I went back and watched what the Bears and Packers game in 2018, where they actually won, what they kind of did in that game, to see if they can maybe implement some of the same things that they're in this season, in this game. You see a lot more RPOs in that one. You see these quick little passes for Trubisky. And one thing that they won't have, unfortunately, was like Tariq Cohen had a big day against the Packers in that game in 2018. And Allen Robinson had a lot of yards after the catch. I know I'm going all over, but I'm just trying to see exactly how the Bears looked better on offense that day. And Trubisky had 2 passing touchdowns. He hasn't had that in the other 3 games. 2 passing touchdowns, 2 total touchdowns is the most he's had in a game against the Packers. And you haven't seen any of that happen in the other 3 games. So a lot of factors go into it, but maybe implementing more of those RPOs to slow things down for Trubisky, get those defenders to kind of think about it, and then a quick hitter to whoever's over the middle, or give it off to David Montgomery. But maybe they implement a little bit of that, go back to their old blocking scheme and what they were doing just philosophically in the first 2 weeks, that could help because, again, they can't get any worse than where they're currently at.
Yeah, and if they do the quick passing, they need to find ways to do it, getting guys the ball in space, either with blocking out there as well or just schematically just getting them, because it feels like they always get sucked to the sideline. Like whenever they want to throw it, they're throwing it to the sideline, finding a way to get some yards over the middle of the field where guys can maybe do something a little bit more after the catch is what I'm hoping to see. And then, of course, I think David Montgomery as a receiver could have himself a bigger impact as well. Again, if they can't run the ball, they're going to have to find a way to give him some touches, and that's, of course, the easiest way to do so. Is there any other items on offense you want to discuss? I know obviously the biggest talking point that we haven't mentioned yet would be the Jimmy Graham revenge game that's going to be occurring here, the second one of the season actually, because we already faced the Saints, but I don't know. Is there anything else? I don't think there's really any stock in that. Kind of too much. I don't think he's going to play with an extra chip on his shoulder for going up against Green Bay or anything, but is there anything else on offense that you want to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, he might. Well, he's a very passionate guy, and we'll see how it plays out. He did not practice today. I think that was just due to a veteran day off. So I think obviously we'll see number 80 out on the field for the Bears, but it would be nice to see, these tight ends actually get involved. Like we've been waiting to actually see this happen for a long, long time. And Bill Lazor, I think, something that we could talk about, Will, is if Mitch Trubisky is the starter on Sunday, now he has a new offensive coordinator in Bill Lazor. How's that going to, play into what the Bears do schematically and what their game plan is? It is someone that Trubisky obviously hasn't had before calling plays. Very similar results to, what Matt Nagy was calling, just stuff that doesn't work. But you still got to account for those things. He's not used to Bill Lazor like he was Matt Nagy for the past 2 years, but just something to look out for. And we'll see how that kind of plays out. But yeah, offensively, look, we're just hoping to see something better because what we've been watching this whole season and even last season has been atrocious. And it'd be nice to see some rhythm, some actual, drives being sustained and points. Points would be nice. And look, Cairo Santos had a great season, but actual offensive points will. So do I think it'll happen against the Packers on Sunday Night Football with them coming, off a bad loss to the Colts? Not really, but it'd be great to see.
Would be. Actually, I think that is an interesting wrinkle you threw in there with this being, Bill Lazor, his second game where he is going to be calling plays, and he has a different quarterback. So how would that change his approach? And can he perhaps call plays for Trubisky that can set him up for success, unlike Matt Nagy, how that was always tending to be a struggle? I think that would be an interesting one to watch out for as well. Just how does Bill Lazor approach Mitch at QB differently than Matt Nagy, if at all differently? And I think that would be, again, an interesting wrinkle, a story within a story. Everyone's talking about Mitch maybe coming back. Well, what about Bill Lazor? Can he get more out of him just based off of the play calls? So that's an interesting one, Nick. A good call on that. You want to move over to defense? I feel like we need to kind of change it up over here.
Yeah, one last thing. Get better on third downs. 4 of 26 in their last 2 games. Well, that, again, atrocious stats, associated with the offense. But third down, let's see if, especially on third down, how Bill Lazor and Mitch Trubisky can maybe have an answer for the blitz. They didn't have anything against an answer against the Minnesota Vikings. Maybe third down can improve or just look for improvement because 4 of 26 in the last 2 games has been awful.
Well, like you said earlier, right? It can't get much worse. We felt that the third down woes tremendously over the last couple of weeks. It's one of those issues that really makes watching some of these games unbearable at times because, as soon as they're in a third down, we're punting. And you already know what's going to be happening. And, yeah, obviously improvement on the money down would be huge. Helps time possession, helps sustain drives, of course. And, again, the more times you can convert on third down, the better your odds are of actually putting up points. It's a real simple football strategy. I don't even know if it's strategy, just conceptual how the game plays. But all right, moving on to the Bears defense. I think one of our bigger topics this week is the fact that Eddie Jackson did go on the COVID reserve list. Now, he didn't contract the virus. He was just a close contact to someone outside of the team that did. So more than likely, as long as he keeps putting in negative tests, he could be back in the building on Saturday. But still, that's technically 2 bye weeks then for Eddie Jackson. I know he can be engaged at home, watching film and being a part of the meetings and everything like that. He may not be a player that needs a full week of on-the-field practice to be effective on game day. But Nick, do you see this having a negative effect if he does play? Obviously, if he doesn't, we know that's a negative effect. But do you think this could have an impact on the game since he's unable to be in the building?
It definitely could. I mean, I think guys get into a routine once they're in, week 12 of the season, right? You go to the practice field, you know what you have to do. You get in this routine of things, and when you break that in more than halfway this point of the season, it could get you out of rhythm. But look, Eddie Jackson is a professional. He's now a veteran in this league. He knows what it takes to get his body right and just the mental preparation with the X's and O's to be ready for a game. So if Eddie Jackson is able to go, which I think he will be come Sunday night, I think he'll be ready. He'll know you won't see him blow assignments or anything like that. You would hope not. But I think if this was maybe a younger player who's still trying to get accustomed to things and this is his first year in the league, yeah, it definitely can be something where it can affect the results on the field. But even if it was, let's say, Deion Bush in place of Eddie Jackson, I'd still feel comfortable that it's a guy that would know the system, knows the guys around him, and would be able to execute the play calls that Chuck Pagano is calling. But I think Eddie Jackson will be just fine for this one.
Wow, Deion Bush. When's the last time we actually mentioned his name on the show?
It's been a while, Will. Look, I mean, I guess that means Tashawn Gibson's doing his job somewhat, but yeah, it has been a while since I've been able to mention that guy, and I'm glad I was able to.
Right? Yeah, it's always nice when that happens. Yeah, I think Jackson will be fine, but again, I think it's the bigger name on defense, and honestly, with this defense, there hasn't been much news, which is a good thing for the most part here. Looking at the Packers, though, specifically, I think Aaron Rodgers, he's playing very efficient football this year. He does lead the NFL with 115.8 passer rating, which would be the second highest of his career. He's only been sacked 11 times. He's completing about 68% of his passes, which is his highest mark since 2011. Yeah, 2011. So since I was in high school. He has 29 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, and his yards per attempt is the highest mark since 2014. And he's also throwing touchdowns on 8% of his passes. So almost 1 in every 10 throws is ending up in the end zone as a touchdown for Green Bay. And obviously the Bears, we've seen them do a pretty good job against him over the last 3 games. They've only allowed him to a 78.3 passer rating and only 2 total touchdowns. So, Nick, when you're watching Aaron Rodgers this year, is there anything different that you're seeing out of him that the Bears should be keeping tabs on and maybe slightly alter their approach on how they prepare for him compared to the past? Or are you expecting or hoping for more or less of the same?
The Bears, like you mentioned, and the stats kind of back it up, they played Aaron Rodgers, I think, pretty competitively, pretty well. But, I want to say what the Colts did in the second half of their game, which kind of helped them get that victory against the Packers. They were up 28-14, Will, going into halftime. And the Packers only scored 3 points in the second half in the fourth quarter. And what I was seeing what they were doing, they were just limiting Aaron Rodgers and that Packers offense. They were limiting the big plays happening, especially on first down. So then when it got to second and third down, it was either a run to Aaron Jones or something that didn't quite get them enough to convert the chains. And then there was just really, really tight coverage. And with the corners and the secondary that the Bears has, outside of maybe Buster Screen right now, Kyle Fuller and Jalen Johnson can do that job. So I think it hasn't been really anything different with Aaron Rodgers. He's still effective, can make all the throws, and can get outside the pocket, and that's where he can arguably is even the most dangerous. So it's not that I've seen anything different. He's still very efficient and can kill you on any single play. But what I just saw from the Colts in that second half, again, they limited the big gains on first down. They played tight coverage, and they were bringing Darius Leonard a couple times on the blitz on third down. And we know Roquan Smith has been playing absolutely crazy, phenomenal football lately. I wonder if Chuck Pagano could do something like that to Aaron Rodgers on a third down situation to speed up his mental clock, to maybe force an incompletion or just force an errant throw. And Roquan Smith would be a perfect candidate to send the blitz, just like the Colts did last week with Darius Leonard.
All right, I like that a lot. I think you can tell me if this is going to spoil something later on in the show, and if it's so, I can pause and we can talk about it later. But Davante Adams actually lined up in the slot is one of my bigger concerns. We saw it last season, multiple times, and obviously, I think 30% of all of his snaps actually come in the slot, and we saw Minnesota kind of make that adjustment too. That pick on Buster seems to be the mantra, and obviously when you look at the Bears defense, that's a easy strategy for any offense. I'm assuming I may be doing a slight spoiler alert, so I may want to pause, but I'm just letting you know as I'm looking at the roster, it's what's on my mind.
Yeah, no, well, that is definitely in my notes as well, and it is in a later portion of the show. But hey, that's if we're thinking it, then the Packers are thinking it, and this is just going to be a huge focal point and maybe a determination of how the Packers can exploit this Bears defense. But we won't give it away too easily. But yep, I'm on the same page with you.
Other than that, I'm just kind of looking around. Akeem Hicks being out still is one of my bigger concerns. I know that Green Bay uses both running backs, Williams, as well as, what's the other name? It's escaping me right now.
Well, you know why you haven't heard about Aaron Jones lately? The last time they've had a 100-yard rusher was week 2. So a 168-yard game in week 2. And that was the last time the Packers have had a running back rush for 100 yards. So they rushed for just 66 yards on 18 carries last Sunday against the Colts. But yeah, Aaron Jones has been a non-factor in terms of the production as of later, in terms of like getting those 100-yard games. And without Akeem Hicks, we saw what happened, just last Sunday when he went out, what Dalvin Cook was able to do. The Bears had him in check for the entire game. Akeem Hicks leaves the game with that hamstring injury. Guess what? Dalvin Cook's actually getting some good yardage. Don't let this be the game where Aaron Jones goes off because Akeem Hicks, and he didn't practice today. And we don't know what his status is going to be for this Sunday night, but that's definitely going to be a storyline for this Bears defense, what it looks like with and without Akeem Hicks. And we saw that the Bears have done a great job against Dalvin Cook for the entire game, did a fantastic job at stopping Derrick Henry. They've been on an uptick with this with their rushing defense. So, yeah, if Akeem Hicks can't go, that's a little concerning with what Aaron Jones hasn't been able to do. This could be the game.
Yeah, both backs, at least combined, they do average collectively over 100 yards per game. Green Bay does like to feed both of the horses back there. And like you said, you took it. I mean, obviously, Akeem Hicks, if he can't go, we saw exactly what happened without him when he exited that game. And that's one of those interesting matchups to pay attention to, because the Bears need him out there for the energy, for the passion, and really just from the caliber of a player that he is. And he also does lead the team with 14 quarterback hits. So if you want to kind of put some pressure on Aaron Rodgers, Akeem Hicks has been one of the best Bears, or actually been the best Bear, actually getting to and at least getting a hit on quarterbacks, which again, that's been tough for opponents going up against the Packers. And if you lose someone like Akeem Hicks, it's only going to get even more difficult without him. But Nick, is there anything else on this Bears defense specifically that you wanted to discuss here on the show?
It's Jalen Johnson. He said before the draft that he has been looking forward to going one-on-one against Davante Adams. Here is his opportunity now.
Yep.
Because when he said that and, the Bears ended up drafting him, it was like, hey, guess what, Jalen Johnson, you're going to get to guard this guy twice a year for the next who knows how many years now. And now this is his opportunity. So that's one I'm excited to see. And we know, like you mentioned, Will, like Davante Adams will line up in the slot, but no doubt majority of his snaps are out wide when he's against Jalen Johnson, the guy that, he admires as a receiver. He loves everything he does, but he's been looking forward to this matchup for a very, very long time. Let's see how it plays out on Sunday night.
Yeah, this is one that we've been kind of waiting for some time. And obviously, Adams, he has the third most in the NFL, third most first downs gained for receivers at 44. When he is targeted, Aaron Rodgers has a 136 passer rating, which is the highest of any wideout quarterback duo in the NFL this season. He's catching about 78% of his targets. He also has 8 touchdowns in the last 5 games. So this is a big matchup, and you know that Johnson's been looking for it. I can't wait to see what he can do in some of those situations, and I'll save my other note to probably supplement one of your points later on here in the show. But yeah, no, that's a matchup. Again, I don't think it's going to be one of your backbreaking matchups later, but it is a fun one to watch because of some of the verbal, I guess, items that were spoken upon here earlier on in the offseason before the draft even took place. And again, whenever you call out a receiver by name before you even drafted, he has, and now you're in his division, he has that somewhere in his locker, and he's been waiting for this one too. Adams has. So this is going to be a really interesting matchup to watch as well. But moving over to the Bears special teams, topic of the week, I guess would be the new returner yet again, Nick, DeAndre Carter, who the Bears claimed off of waivers. Last week, he's now on the active roster. In his career, 59 career punt returns, averaging about 9.5 yards per return over his career. This should remove Anthony Miller from these duties, who kind of did it in a spot situation when Harris went down. But to me, that's the biggest special teams leads topic of anything that's new. Is there anything you want to add about that? Or any other special teams points you want to make?
Yeah, I think for special teams, I want to see Cairo Santos kind of continue his consecutive field goals made. He's at 13 straight right now, hasn't missed a field goal since week 3. So he's been on fire, and he's been a very consistent force for the Bears, which hasn't been the case for really anything on the Bears offense this season. And also just to look on the other side for special teams, Darius Shepard last week against the Indianapolis Colts fumbled on a kickoff. Look, the Packers were fumbling the ball all day on last Sunday against Colts. 3 fumbles, 4 total turnovers. But something to keep in mind to see who, if Shepard is still being labeled as a kick returner, but if he is, hey, he just fumbled last weekend. Maybe he can do it again this upcoming Sunday. But just looking to see if Cairo Santos can really just add on to the consecutive field goals. I think for the Bears right now, Robbie Gould has that record for 26, I believe, 26 consecutive field goals. Hey, Cairo Santos, if this Bears offense can't get into the end zone, keep, just being ready for those field goal opportunities if the Bears can actually get them close enough.
Yeah, that's the big if for sure. Good points there, Nick. Moving on down, let's talk about our Week 12 X Factors here, starting with the Bears offense. Nick, who's going to be your X Factor?
The X Factor, I think, is going to be Mitch Trubisky, but I just wrote down as my X Factor being the QB needs to be a contributor. Like I mentioned earlier on the show, there's only been one game in the Matt Nagy era where Trubisky has accounted for more than 1 touchdown, and that was 2018 where he had 2 passing touchdowns. But the quarterback just needs to be a factor in this game, and if Trubisky can do that, obviously if he's a starter with his legs, just completing passes, just extending plays, the Bears will have a much higher chance of making this game competitive. And in last week's loss against the Indianapolis Colts, you saw both the Smiths, Zadarius and Preston, offsides, or there was, I think, 5 penalties called just between those 2 players with offside penalties, neutral zone infraction, whatever it may be. And we've seen Mitch Trubisky actually do some good things with the hard count. Maybe this is a game where obviously there's no fan. There's not going to be any fans or anything. But can you get these 2 guys that were a little jumpy last weekend to jump off sides and give you those free 5 yards? So my X Factor, just Trubisky, the quarterback, just being an actual factor in this game. And, they haven't played very well this whole season, but especially against the Packers. Let's see if that can possibly change this Sunday. I'm not going to put all my money on it, but that would, like I said, it'll make the game a little bit more competitive.
It definitely wouldn't hurt. It's interesting because, like with Mitch, I mean, everything comes back into the equation. His targets, so receivers, tight ends, they're going to have to get used to a different ball delivery yet again. Because, I mean, Foles has a much more, touch on his throws compared to Mitch, who is a little bit more with the velocity. So all these things, they do change a little bit. So I think he is probably the end-all, be-all X factor if he goes out there and play. I'll just kind of supplement what we talked about earlier just briefly, and I'll throw mine to Bill Lazor for round 2. In my notes for him, I just talked about it being his second game. What lessons did he learn calling plays his first time? He had an extra week to kind of dive into it a little bit more. And I'm hopeful that he can find some lessons that Matt Nagy's had a hard time finding himself. And also with a different quarterback, how does it change it? The overall game plan, and can he be the one, like we mentioned, to maybe boost your X factor in Mitch and actually get more out of him and tailor the offense that maybe even go back to what we saw preseason Mitch's rookie year, the real simple stuff that kind of just tailors to his skill set. And, even if it's not the most complex stuff, At least Mitch is comfortable, and you're trying to exploit some of his strengths and put them on display. So for me, it will be Bill Lazor in his round 2 of calling plays on offense. Moving over to our defensive X factors, Nick, who do you got?
Yeah, so it's not who, but what the defense has to do. And it's really taking away or trying your best to take away Davante Adams. In the 4 games in the Matt Nagy, since he became head coach, 2 100-yard games, 2 touchdowns, been targeted 8 or more times in each of those 4 games. So I think the big thing for this Bears defense is if you can try to make the other guys on the Packers beat you, that's going to put you in this defense in a position to hopefully get some turnovers and actually get off the field in 3 and outs and things like that. You look at second and targets, like here's the stat line for Davante Adams: 68 receptions, 89 targets, 847 yards, 10 touchdowns. And you mentioned the receiving first downs. He has 44, which is no other team on the Packers has even 20. So they're targeting him often. He is the go-to guy. But you look at the other guys, they're not even close in terms of stats when you look at it. Second in targets, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, 51, and Davante Adams has 89. Second in touchdowns, Robert Tonyan, 6. Again, Adams has 10. Second in receptions, Robert Tonyan and Aaron Jones have 32, 68 receptions for Davante Adams. So a majority of all the plays, the big plays, they're going to go to Davante Adams. If you could somehow take that away, mitigate the damage there, make everybody else beat you. You saw what happened last week against the Colts and Packers. Marquez Valdes-Scantling has a huge reception to even get the Packers in a situation to kick the field goal, but he also has the fumble that ends up losing the game. So put the ball in everybody else's hands other than Davante Adams and see what happens.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think if you take yours and you throw in mine, which is going to be Roquan Smith, and if he can handle both of the running backs, then I think Green Bay's offense is in trouble. Roquan, as we know, he's been so much fun to watch week in, week out, really just starting to hit his stride, and one of the best, if not the best, inside linebacker right now in the NFL. Second in the league with 15 tackles for a loss, third in total tackles, and he's had some big games against some running backs here over the last couple for the Bears. And for Green Bay, both their backs, Williams, as well as, it's not Adams. Who is it, Nick? For the last time, I need to write this down. It's on the bottom of my notes for later. It is
Aaron Jones.
Davante Adams, Aaron Jones, AJ. I can remember that. Aaron Jones. I should know
this.
this.
There you go, yeah.
I'm tired. Last day of work, though, for the week, so that's exciting for me.
Thanksgiving. We're thinking about Thanksgiving.
This game, dude, I'm starving. I didn't eat before the show.
I can't wait.
Right?
Yeah, no, I didn't eat either. So, yeah, that's food is on my mind too, Will. So don't worry about it.
Right, we're good here. But for Roquan, he has to have a big game against both these backs. They're rotated and used all over the offense. They both combine for over 50% of the team's touch share. If you combine them together, both are atop of the team in total touches. 10 touchdowns combined and over 470 yards receiving, as well as 860 yards on the ground. So these two backs, if you put them as one, would be the most prolific back in the NFL, and they're both right there in the backfield. So it doesn't matter if it's Williams, doesn't matter if it's Jones. Roquan needs to just be playing how he has been for the last month and a half, and if so, he can lock them down as receivers as well as runners. And if you can also bring in yours to the equation, Nick, and do your best against Adams, that should really hold back and handcuff this Green Bay Packers offense from what they want to do. It's Adams, and then it's these backs, and then it just kind of gets real hairy real quick for him. So I like where you went, throw in mine, and that's a pretty good game plan for the Bears. Nick, obviously the real X factors are the ones that make a huge difference to our show. The listeners have given their support with their generous donations. I don't know if we have any shout outs. I know we did some on Sunday. If we do, awesome. I don't over here on the PayPal side, but if not, we can just let people know how they can get a shout out in next week's preview.
Yeah, so if you want to get a shout out on the next preview show, here's how you can make that happen through Venmo or PayPal. If you send us any type of donation, we'll give you a shout out, and you can do that at Venmo at the Chicago Audible. Should see my name and the Chicago Audible logo. On PayPal, that's www.chicagoaudible.com/PayPal. One more time, if you want to shout out on the next preview show, you could do it through Venmo at the Chicago Audible or PayPal, www.chicagoaudible.com/PayPal.
Awesome stuff. Let's keep rolling down through our Thanksgiving week preview, and it's time to get into our back-breaking matchups of the week. Looking for this Bears offense. Well, it's hard to not go with Zadarius Smith versus Leno Jr. and Rashad Coward again. I don't know. Or is it going to be Spriggs? We'll see. But either way, it's not looking pretty. Smith, he has 4 sacks coming off each edge. He lines up on both sides, so he's going to be back and forth all game long. His 8 sacks lead the team, which is also the 3rd most of edge rushers in the NFL. He's also one of the better guys at the edge in terms of stopping the run. It's going to be really hard for the Bears to get to the outside wherever Zadarius Smith is lined up. So for those reasons, again, getting after QBs against either of our tackles, as well as his ability to stop the run, is why this is my back-breaking matchup. And I also want to take a moment, though, to mention a name, I think, here that fans should be keeping an eye on. That's Rashawn Gary. He also plays edge for Green Bay. He's like their 3rd guy in the rotation, and he's been kind of getting a lot better over the last few weeks. He has 11 total pressures over his last 2 games, which is the 2nd most in the NFL over that time span. He's not getting a lot of sack totals, but he's been affecting quarterbacks, making them hurry up through the progression, get them off their mark. And we all know with Mitch, pressure is something that he does struggle with. So for me, Zadarius Smith, of course, is the big name to pay attention to, but I can see a guy on Sunday night in this rivalry game, Rashawn Gary, who's not a big name, but could end up being sneaky disruptive for our Bears offense. I just want to make sure to give that a note there. But how about you, Nick? Who's going to be your backbreaker on defense? I'm dying to find out.
Yeah, you're dying to find out, but we were definitely alluding to him earlier, Will, and that's Buster Screen versus whoever is in the slot. And Devontae Adams, like we mentioned before in this podcast, he will line up there. You look into last year's matchup in week 15, Devontae Adams torched him for a touchdown. Buster Screen was nowhere in place. And you look at the last 2 games for Buster Screen, giving up a total of 3 touchdowns, 2 to Adam Thielen, 1 to A.J. Brown. And in the last 3 games, you've been targeted 12 times, Buster Screen. He's given up 12 receptions, Will. And when was the last time, if you had to guess, Will, when was the last time you had a PBU? If you had to guess what week?
Is it last year?
No, well, it's pretty darn close. It's week 1, and he's got 1 PBU on the season. So Buster Screen's going to be the guy. And look, this has been a common thing for opposing offenses. They're like, where's the weak link on this Bears defense? It's a pretty stout group. Oh, there he is. It's Buster Screen as a nickel corner position. And, you know, I was wondering, like, with how he played the last 2 weeks against the Vikings, Titans, can the Bears look at one of their younger guys to see if they can get more out of him? And it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case, but and since it isn't, he needs to be ready. He's going to be targeted. He hasn't been playing very well as of late, and with Devontae Adams being in the slot, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, if he has to, whoever's in the slot, he needs to be ready. He's going to be targeted, and I just gave you the stats. He hasn't done very well, so that's easily the back-breaking matchup. The other 10 players on this defense can do everything perfect, and then it could just be a simple – route where whoever's running it gets that reception, gets that first down, keeps his defense on the field. But it's definitely going to be Buster Screen versus whoever is in the slot.
Yeah, and what they do with Adams in the slot that I think is going to really just be a deciding factor is they like to send him on a lot of wheel routes where all he's doing is going horizontal and then up the sideline. And we all know we've seen teams do this against Buster Screen, throwing in a little bit of traffic in his way, and he just can't keep up. And with going up the likes of Adams, and the accuracy of Aaron Rodgers, it's going to be, pinpoint precision. And if he can just get his head around, maybe he can actually knock another ball and get a PPU tallied for him. But yeah, those wheel routes, because they like to, keep him closer to the line of scrimmage, and that way he has more room to work with instead of just having him line up along the boundary anyway, I think is another thing to kind of keep an eye out to see if that does exploit Buster Screen. And maybe the Bears play a little bit more zone and then they get some more help on some of those routes instead of a pure man coverage, which may help, but also we'll find out here sooner rather than later. All right, Nick, it's time to find out who has the edge. And you're up first. You have the Bears rushing attack versus that Packers run defense.
Look, well, even with David Montgomery back, it's great to have him, but this Bears rushing attack hasn't been able to produce at all. And even if they go to what they were doing week 1, week 2, And the Packers rush defense isn't very good. It's not like a great group, but it's still, I think, is going to be too much for the Bears rushing attack to actually take advantage of. We don't even know who's really starting on this offensive line as of late. And look, Eric Kush was the guy they brought in. I wonder if he's in the mix for even having some playing time. I doubt it, but we don't even know who's at right tackle at this point. And I just don't see it getting any better in a primetime matchup against the Packers. So I'll have to give it to them.
All right. Simple enough. For me, the Bears passing attack versus the Packers pass defense. Green Bay, they're 13th against the pass. They only allow about 230 yards per game through the air. They don't really get a lot of interceptions, though. They do allow the 6th highest pass rating this season at 102. But still, it's the Bears passing attack. It doesn't matter who's under center. It's going to be anemic. Unless Mitch provides this huge boost, that would be a pleasant surprise. I just don't see it happening. So even if it was the 30th ranked pass defense, I think that defense would get the edge. So it's pretty simple to determine the Packers as those who have the edge here in this matchup. So Green Bay, I don't need to harp on the Bears passing woes too much. We all know. Switching over to defense, I have the Bears run defense versus the Packers run offense. Man, I wish I know if Akeem Hicks is playing or not. That would really kind of help me sway, but I'll give it to the Bears run defense. They did a good job against two prolific and different running backs in the last two games, both Henry as well as Cook. And they'll have to go up against, like I said, that dual back threat, Nara Jones and Jamal Adams, again, combined over 100 yards per game on the ground. They average about 4.5 yards per carry as well. Over their last three games, though, the Bears defense has been the 6th best run defense in the NFL. And again, Akeem Hicks is the biggest variable here to kind of keep in mind with his health. As we saw that huge stark contrast as soon as he went out with that hamstring injury against the Vikings. But I'll give it to the Bears run defense, and I've been hesitant to get a little confidence in them over the last month or so, but I'll give them the edge in this one. Maybe Roquan Smith's play right now is a big deciding factor in that one for us too. But Nick, how about you? Bears passing defense versus Aaron Rodgers and that passing attack.
Yeah, it's a tough one, Will. And what I think really factors into who's going to be the winner in this matchup is what this Bears offense can do. Because the Bears defense can do things, do some great things in certain drives for a majority of the game, but at some point, the other offense is going to get a few touchdowns or just a few efficient drives there. And it's the Bears and Packers. Well, we've seen this story one too many times where the Bears just can't do really anything. The defense is out there for too long, and Aaron Rodgers finds a way. And I've been hurt too many times in the past from that number 12, that man. So I want to give it to the Bears. I really do, because I think they do actually match up really well. We just talked about Devontae Adams is the guy. And then you want to make the other guys be the ones that beat you. But even if the Bears do that, I still think Aaron Rodgers will have enough to win this, to get the edge here in this matchup. So I'll give it to the Packers. The Bears, it's going to be competitive, but it's all going to weigh on what the Bears offense can really do in this matchup. And not projecting that to be very good, so I'll give it to the Packers.
All right. Switching into now the final portion of our show. It's time to hand out some predictions and wrap things up. So go ahead and beginning with our weekly bold predictions. Nick, where's your mind at? What's going to be your bold prediction that's going to lead to your MVP choice, which is going to lead to your final score outcome? I can't wait.
You know what? So it's so funny that you put that all into sequence there, Will, because this time I made it. None are correlated. It's bold prediction. I'm not really expecting this to happen, but it's bold, right? That's what this segment's for. But I say that David Montgomery will have 2 rushing touchdowns in this game. The Bears have 2 all season, one from David Montgomery and one from Nick Foles. And that would be the second time in David Montgomery's career that he would have done that. Last time was against the Eagles last year. And the last 4 games, just to kind of, go the opposite way, the last 4 games, Packers have given up 3 rushing touchdowns. Those 3 rushing touchdowns have come against the Minnesota Vikings and Dalvin Cook. So you can see both sides to it, but bold prediction, David Montgomery finds the end zone rushing twice.
So wait, we only have 2 rushing touchdowns on the year, and Foles has 1? Mm-hmm. So Nick Foles has 50% of our rushing touchdowns for the season?
That is correct.
Wow, that's a stat that I never wanted to hear in my entire lifetime. Thank you. That's a bold stat in itself. For me, I went with the defensive bold prediction. I have the Bears picking Aaron Rodgers off 3 times, which will, of course, be the most in a single game for him this year. His current high was 2 against the Buccaneers. The Bears' defense, as we know, they haven't been super advantageous of getting those takeaways, and if they want a chance to win this game, they're going to need it. So I think it's fairly damn bold to say that the Bears will pick off Aaron Rodgers 3 times, which is why it's going to be my bold prediction for the week. So, Nick, moving into the next segment here, who's going to be your MVP prediction for this Sunday night matchup?
Yeah, so I think if I was the Green Bay Packers, and obviously you're going to put Devontae Adams in the slot, but I think they're going to try and test Dalen Johnson. And I'm just going to predict that he's going to be the MVP in this game and really holding his own when Devontae Adams or whatever receivers on that side is going up against him. I think this is going to be a game where the Packers are going to have to throw the ball to get yards. And when it all comes down to it, Jalen Johnson's going to have a good first game against the Packers, which would be encouraging because, again, we talked about it earlier in the show. He's been wanting to go against Devontae Adams for a very long time. He has that opportunity this Sunday night, but I think he will be the MVP in this game, Jalen Johnson.
I like it. He was on my short list for MVP choices for mostly the same reasons as you. I think the easy one, Nick, that I'm not going to do this week, although I think it would be 3 weeks in a row for me, which is why I'm steering away, would be Roquan Smith. Just with his level of play, I think that's an easy blanket statement each and every week. I will stick with defense, though. I think it's smart that we're both staying with defense, just considering who the heck could even be an MVP in offense right now. I'm going to go with Khalil Mack. I want to see him do to Aaron Rodgers what he did in his Chicago Bears debut. Coming off a bye, maybe he's a little bit more rested, and he's been good this year, and we just need him to be great or exceptional. And I would love to see a standout performance here, multiple sacks, turnovers, whatever it needs to be. But Khalil Mack changing the game would be a big reason why he'd be the MVP. And he tends to play better in some of these bigger moments, whether it be prime time, whether it be going up against some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And we have a combination of both here, and hopefully it's a recipe for success. So I want to see a big game out of Mack, and fingers crossed he can be our MVP when it's all said and done. So, Nick, all we have to do now is a couple things. We have to figure out who's going to win, or at least predict who's going to win. I'm still 1 game behind you. I'm going to say this won't be the week where I try to catch up, but I can go first if you would like me to as well.
Yeah, Will, what do you got happening in the Sunday night game?
Not a lot. Good for us. I have the Packers winning here. They average over 30 points per game. Obviously, I don't think they're going to get that against this Bears defense. I'm going to give them 24, though. 24 points, and the Bears are only going to score 15. How they get 15, we'll figure it out when we get there. But for the Bears this season, it's been tough sledding, scoring points. I know for Green Bay, they've held a couple people to like 16 or 17 this season. I think 15 would be the new season low for that defense. And going up against this Bears offense, it seems like the perfect time for them. So Mitch comes back. We all think maybe he provides a spark. May not be enough. Not enough firepower, not enough offensive line assistance for us, and who the heck knows what the game plan is going to look like. So defense will do their part. Offense won't help. Same story, different week, and that's the 2020 Chicago Bears season. How about you, Nick? Who do you have winning this game and why?
Yeah, I have to go with the Packers as well, Will. I think, again, it's a primetime matchup. You don't even know who actually is the quarterback going into this one. That's never a good situation to be in, Will, no matter what quarterbacks you have there as your option. So I think the score will be 20-10 Packers. Look, it's well under their average that they're scoring right now, the Packers, but the Bears offense hasn't shown that they can even score 20 points. Actually, I think average 19 point something per game. And so, we've seen those. We've seen them get a 1-point win against Tampa Bay, but it's ever since that game, it's been a downward trend really for this Bears team. And I think that again, the Packers just have a little bit too much at the end there because the defense has done everything they could all game, and the offense just doesn't give them just enough. So 20-10 Packers, and it'll be the 5th straight loss for the Bears and put us deeper into this dark hole that we're in already. So 20-10 Packers. Yep,
20 is enough. More than enough going up against, again, us, unfortunately. How confident are you in this game? Obviously, we both had them losing, so we're going to be south of 5, but where's your confidence meter?
Yeah, I have it around a 3.7. I just made that number on the spot here, but just for all the reasons I said, primetime matchup, Aaron Rod, like all these, and how the Bears have been playing, like they've been awful coming off the bye week. I think they're in the last couple of years 0-6 coming off the bye the last couple of years. So they're not very good when they get more time to remember what Matt Nagy was saying, self-scout. And there's a lot to self-scout about to try and fix this offense. You can't do that in a bye week. Can't even do that in a season. So I'm not very confident in this game what the Bears can do, but hey, please prove me wrong. That would be a great Sunday night, I guess gift. It's the holiday season, right? Just a gift to have on a Sunday night going into a hopeful Monday victory.
Yeah, that would be so nice. I put down, I did have a number that I didn't just pull out of thin air. I had a 3.5 down. So very close, very close. Again, I don't think we need to, reharp on everything as to why. I think the whole show kind of goes in one direction here. So, yeah, I don't think the Bears will have enough here to kind of get it done. Nick, instead of like a final thought as we wrap up, how about we just do something a little different since, tomorrow's Thanksgiving. A lot of people listening may be on Thanksgiving. What's one thing on this Bears team that you're thankful for? And then we can wrap up the show with that.
Ooh, one thing that I'm thankful for with this Bears team, you have to look on the defensive side of the ball. Well, I think that's just the most obvious thing right now. And, I am thankful for, I'll go with Roquan Smith, a guy that, even starting the season, a little shaky, right? But we've seen the caliber of player that he is and that he has the potential to play at, being a former number 8 overall pick in the 2018 NFL draft. He's elite. He's an elite inside linebacker who can cover, run downhill, who I think has more potential when you put him on a blitz to go get some sacks, and Chuck Pagano needs to find that. But I am thankful for him because there's no doubt the Bears are going to extend him and give him a long-term contract and just be that piece, that centerpiece in the middle of this defense that can go out and you know what to expect from him. So I'm thankful for Roquan Smith because when he is playing at this elite level, this Bears defense, it's tough to do anything on them, or even this season. But when he's playing the way he is, it makes things real, real tough.
I was thinking about using like a big name. I'm going to go small. I'm thankful for Brent Urban. Some small guy who we didn't talk a lot about throughout the offseason. He was here towards the end of last year. Did do a decent job in his spot situations. Good role player, and that role expanded this year, and he was able to live up to it. And I think in terms of value, he's one of the more valuable players on this team, just in terms of what they're paying him and what they're getting out of him. And when on the defense, when you have actually this whole team, but on defense specifically, when you have number 94, which is the complete opposite, I think it does put in perspective, some of these smaller players who don't get all the recognition, all the fame, but they do a good job. They are, tremendous assets to this team, and I'm thankful we have them. I mean, we had to find a way to replace like a Nick Williams type last year, and I think we did a pretty good job here with Brent. So very thankful that we have him here on this team as well. But I want to thank everyone here who listened to this week's preview episode. Please take some time to enjoy Thanksgiving here if you're in the United States. At the same time, we're thankful for each and every one of you for listening, whether it's here on YouTube, anywhere on a live stream service, or just listening to this podcast. And if you appreciate us and you're thankful, maybe this is the perfect time to rate or review our show on Apple Podcasts. It does help us reach more Bears fans just like you. And of course, we're ever grateful for any of those reviews that do come in. So we'll be back soon as that final whistle blows on Sunday night. Hopefully the Bears give us, again, something to